Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second webinar in our 6-part series on house hacking here in Denver. So today's webinar is learning about financing, which is probably the most critical component to a successful house hack, aside from actually finding a house, because you need someone like a lender or a really rich uncle to give you a bunch of money, go out and buy the place. But the key to house hacking is learning financing, because we can do these ultra low down payment programs that are geared towards owner occupants, which is one of the big secrets of house hacking. So we're going to go through a lot of stuff that we have learned over the years of helping hundreds of clients and doing dozens of deals ourselves about what to do. So make sure you check out this and the other webinar series as well. So I've got 4 great and smart people here in the studio with me today. My name is Chris Lopez. I'm the founder of Envision Advisors and doing a house hack. Next one is Ben Einspar, who's a house hacker and with Envision Advisors.
What's up, Chris?
We got Jeff White, who's a house hacker and an agent here at Envision Advisors. What is up, Jeff?
Living the dream, Chris.
You are living the house hack dream, and we're going to go into a lot of that because he is our poster child for house hacking. And then a new face for a lot of people on the webinar and the podcast, but not new for many of our clients, is Troy Howe with Nova Home Loans. Troy, glad to have you here.
Good to be here, Chris.
So, give everyone a little context here on how we're going to present this and talk about this, because I know there's a ton of information out there on the internet about house hacking, and there's 3 things. Some of it's good, a lot of it's not, and a lot of it is not here for Colorado. So reading a Bigger Pockets post about someone house hacking a 4-plex in Memphis, Tennessee in 2012, awesome, but those numbers, what they did, don't apply here. So we are really doing this webinar, the webinars here, with locality in mind, and that we have just tons of experience. That is a huge advantage that we have. So on the Envision Advisor side, we have closed hundreds of house hacking transactions. We have a huge Rolodex of lenders, Troy being on the front end there. But most importantly, this is just stuff that we eat, breathe, and do in and day out. We're active house hackers, different spectrums of it. This is not the first time we've done it, doing it for multiple years. We've had a lot of success in ourselves and our clients. And so if you ever read The Tipping Point or one of those Malcolm Gladwell books, like the 10,000 hour rule, you got 10,000 hours sitting at the table right here in combined knowledge of doing loans, buying properties here in Denver, Colorado. So we're bringing that context to mind and going over the stuff that really matters the most, that we get asked by far the most. So we're going to present this in a frequently asked questions format, because you know what happens on the Envision Advisor side, we talk to new people wanting to either buy their next house hack or buy their first house hack, and we get the same 15 or 20 questions most of the time. And a lot of times we talk to them first, and then they're talking to Troy second to get their lending started, and Troy's answering their questions. So we did a massive brain dump here and say, what are the common questions we get that most of our clients want to know? And we're going to go into those details today. So as we do this, don't be shy with questions or comments here in the chat box. We will be monitoring them and going in there, but very excited to go through these questions with our expert panel. And people out there, don't be shy with questions, please. Lots of what's up. What's up, everyone? All right. So let's go into the first question. And Jeff, this is question number 1. Once you get past, oh, you want a house hack? People say, great. How does lending work out here?
Yeah. So from a super high level, the majority of people are going to pursue a traditional conventional type of loan product, FHA, VA, normal conventional loans, and that's the reality. And the non-conventional, the 20%, is going to be more of those unique grant loans that you hear about. But the big bucket of the 80%ers are going to be the normal conventional straight shots, traditional financing. And that's what I've encountered too. In my own personal investing, I've done only conventional financing. And also, majority of my clients have done that too.
Yeah, I think all of yours have been what? You did one FHA and then everything else was 5% down conventional?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we talk about this because, in real estate, especially getting into real estate investing, there's all these really sexy loan programs. A lot don't apply to house hackers, and people often get lost in these details. Troy, your bread and butter is conventional loans. Give us some more granularity as to what that is and what these enhanced programs are.
Yeah, mainly, like Jeff had mentioned, you're looking at the FHA, VA products and programs, and then Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac are going to take up the bulk of what's done out there. And then the specialty programs, fit certain situations and circumstances. When they can be applied, you want to apply them.
Yeah.
Take advantage of those programs.
And when we say these specially enhanced programs, we're not talking about like hard money or creative seller financing. It's just these variations that banks will have sometimes on certain loan programs, or credit union with something special going on. So it's these very nuanced stuff that's often layered on top of these conventional programs is probably the best way to say it.
Yep. Enhanced is exactly the way to put it,
Yeah.
because at their core, they still can be an FHA, VA, or Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac product. And then they add these enhancements on top of them just to make them a little sweeter of a deal if you fit.
And like I said, they're up there. If you guys know the 80-20 rule, it's very true in house hacking. So about 80% of our transactions are just the bread and butter, quote unquote, boring 5% down stuff. But you get the most amazing leverage in the world that a traditional real estate investor would probably trade a couple toes for. And then, 20%, maybe a little less, are these enhanced programs. It really comes down to what's going on and also what your situation is. So I want to talk about our lender Rolodex here. And this goes back to us just doing a bunch of transactions and a bunch of clients, a bunch of deals ourselves. We learn between being agents, having the podcast, we talk to a ton of people around Denver. So we get to learn a bunch of stuff. And also we get to see what programs actually work and what programs don't work. So we won't go all those details, but like some other ones that we currently are using are these ultra low down payment grant programs that work for a small slice of investors out there. But in our webinar number 1, that was the program that one of Jeff's clients used that bought a $500,000 asset for $3,400 out of pocket.
Yep. For move-in ready, like completely ready to go. Wasn't a fixer-upper at all. It was a beautiful place.
Dude, my car down payment and vacations are more of that, it's crazy. Another one is there's some others out there where certain circumstances, they can give you like a little bit lower interest rate than par rate. So this is where, like, as you talk with us, you talk with Troy, we'll get high level stuff, and we're always going to steer in the right direction, give you the best advice. Majority of the time, though, it is the conventional stuff. And if the stars align, cool. We will definitely get you in the direction of one of these programs as well. Now, here's a really, I guess this is an enhanced program as well, but a much more common enhanced program, Troy, called the 2-1 buy down program. And this is a newer one that's come out of the higher interest rate market. But I love it in the new higher interest rate market because you get lower rates. Plus, if you refi, you're not really penalized. What is the 2-1 buy down program?
Yeah, it's just like you mentioned before, it's an enhancement. So it gets you a better interest rate to start off with on the loan, gives you a better payment, better cash flow position to start off with. And then if you do end up paying off with a refinance early, then you get a credit back for the unused portion. So it works out slick.
So let's say this. Jeff, you just bought a house hack 2 months ago. What was your interest rate?
6.125.
All right. So we'll just say 6% for easy webinar math here.
Yeah.
So Jeff did not do the 2-1 buy down program.
Yeah.
But let's say Jeff did the 2-1 down program. So his note rate is 6%. Well, in year 1, he'd be paying 4%.
Yep.
And then in year 2, he'd be paying 5%. And then year 3, 6%.
Yep.
So it's very helpful for a lot of people that may want to refi here next couple of years, which is I think a good potential to keep on the radar. But also, most importantly, since cash flow is tight with rates going up and rent slowing down, it's a good way for a couple of years to help minimize out-of-pocket cost and help reduce living expenses or increase cash flow. So really cool program. And as Troy said here as well, there's 3-1s, there's 1-1s, there's some common variations.
Yep.
2-1s most common. But again, this is why you want to talk to a lender to have him or her tell you what's up and what works for your situation. So where do I start with lending? Jeff, again, I'm going to pick on you because this is often how it's interesting how like we have our clients talk to us and we're kind of like the front line for lending. They're like, hey, here's high level, but go talk to the expert, Troy.
Yes.
So you have a new house hacking client and they're like, hey, Jeff, I'm in, but okay, what are next steps? Where do I start?
Yeah, they usually want to jump in and see all the cool properties, but I tell them, slow down. First you got to get pre-approved. And a lot of people confuse the pre-approval and pre-qualified. And the big difference there is basically pre-qualified. And I know Troy will correct me and provide the exact lingo.
I'm listening closely. Let's hear what you have to say to me.
Pre-qualified is just initial screening of basically what they just tell you is like, oh yeah, I make X income and here's my monthly debt. And then you say, okay, you're probably pre-qualified for X amount. Pre-approved is more of a deep dive of you look at tax returns, you look at their pay stubs, and then that's like the true true amount. And that's the thing that I tell all my prospective clients, like, hey, nothing wrong with getting pre-qualified, but you just need to get one extra step and get pre-approved. And then we can start the fun process of looking at all these beautiful properties. And the pre-approval is the most important thing to get before you look at anything.
Great. How do you do, Troy?
He nailed it. You're an expert. you can.
I'll see you guys later.
You can stay. You can stay. You're not kicked off.
Yeah. So great explanation, and Jeff is absolutely right in that it is the most important thing because, scenarios that I have seen is that people go out there and play, either Dr. Google or Google Lender. Oh, I got this ailment, or I want to do this, and Google gives you what Google gives you. It's information, not always right, because it's not personalized, it's not local, it's not current to date. The other thing is it's a reality check. I mean, Troy, how many times have you had someone come in, or from Jeff, hey, Jeff says, someone comes, hey, Jeff, when I buy a place that's like $750,000, I can afford it. You're like, oh, cool, go talk to Troy. They come to Troy, I want to do this. And they get pre-approved, and there's the once, and there's a reality check, right, Troy?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes people come in and they think, oh, I can't do anything, and they can, or they think they can do a lot and they can't. So it just is, like you said, the reality check. You get a better idea of what you're capable of doing.
And this is how, just like, we're big on doing discovery calls here on the brokerage and strategy side. Troy does the same thing, call it a different name, but when a new client comes to Troy to say, hey, I'm interested in buying a rental or buying a house hack, Troy wants to learn about what they want to buy, their situation, get your tax returns, your pay stubs, a lot more paperwork as well. But it's so important for the lender to understand the person's situations and the goals.
100%.
Which is something that, like, well, I said, like, you're new to a lot of people on, like, the podcast and webinars. I mean, you have been with us really for, I think 3 or 4 or 5 years now.
Yep.
And just what's been always the feedback we get from clients and our agents is like, wow, the one-on-one attention that Troy gives people is amazing. And that's what you want from a lender, because if they're not going to take the time to understand your situation, that should be a red flag, because you're not going to get the best service. And then if they can't handle a new client, what's going to happen when you time to put an offer in 90 days?
Right. And if you take that a step further, you think about it, it's the biggest liability most people are going to have in their life is a mortgage. And it's the biggest asset all wrapped in a bow.
Yeah.
So any question's a good question is the way I always put it.
Yeah.
You need to have all those nuances talked about and resolved.
So make sure you have a brokerage team, a lending team that spends the time to get to know you, because that's very important. All right. So here's a common question that usually comes up when we talk about pre-approval here is, won't getting my credit run, because I'm not going to purchase for 6 months, isn't it going to ruin my life or ruin my credit? Troy, yes or no?
No, if you want a yes or no answer.
That's what I want.
Absolutely.
Now, peel that back a little bit. Why will it not ruin my credit?
Well, it's not very many points. If you've got good credit, it's not going to hurt it. If you have good depth of credit, it's not going to really hurt it. If you really are super concerned, we'll do a soft check, and we can work off of that. Cool. So, and then that doesn't create an inquiry, and you don't have to worry about the credit point.
Because normally a lot of times it's usually like, what, 1 to 2 points?
It may be 5 or 7.
Okay.
It really is individualistic for each client. It depends on the depth of their credit, how many trade lines they have, where their credit scores are at right now. So some people can impact more than others. But if there's a concern, you just soft check the credit and it's problem solved.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
So again, this is why you want to sit down and talk with a lender like Troy first, because they'll assess a situation. In my perspective, always risk reward. That little bit of points you're giving up now greatly minimizes the risk down the road when you want to start putting offers in. So giving a point or two today, or $1 or $2 today, to use a different metaphor, is well worth it down the road to minimize that risk of like, oh, I thought I could do this,
right,
but I can really only do this. And that sucks.
Yeah. Well, let me throw in a little extra there too.
Yes.
That by looking at the credit up front, if there's anything that needs to be resolved or taken care of, you can work on that. We have ways to advise you or give you some direction on optimizing your credit score, which doesn't only apply to getting the loan, but it permeates through the rest of your life with auto insurance and applying for a cell phone or anything else. Good credit scores are valuable.
Yep.
So it optimizes the loan position, but it also helps you with this. So having the credit looked at helps in a lot of different ways, and we can help you optimize it.
I agree, because it could be like credit repair, which is what often comes to mind, but also I know
that's a little bit of a cuss word. But
is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Well, credit repair, it can definitely have some different connotations because there's definitely some to your point of Google.
Yeah.
People get in touch with some people, and there's definitely some stuff out there that they're trying to get some money off of to repair the credit, where we can take care of some things and actually analyze it for you. We have a whole department that can analyze it for you and give you some definitely good advice to get in a better position.
So great. I'm going to change my phrase from credit repair to credit optimization, because that's really what it is. Because we've had clients where sometimes they're on the bridge of there's different credit points where, hey, if they're really close, think of the next tier, they get a better pricing. But hey, if you do this, hey, pay off this credit card or do this, and you might be able to bump from a 730 to 741. And I don't know if that's a real bridge point.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of great stories that we can go into details later on in different venue and a podcast later on. But sometimes it's using a credit card. Believe it or not, it's not always intuitive exactly what you need to do. Some people have a good idea, but having it analyzed and having a good, clean, detailed roadmap is very helpful, and we can get that for you.
So you should take out a bunch of credit cards, mortgages, and car loans and pay them all on time to get a high score.
Jeff, don't make me change my mind about you. No, maybe to some degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I know what you're talking about.
The key is paying it on time.
I know some people are afraid of any debt. So you have those people that have no credit cards, right? And
and it's a bit of a bell curve. You don't use it enough, then you don't have a great credit score. You use it too much, then you lower your credit score. Yep. So it's that optimization. So you want to be at the top or the peak of potential that you can do.
So here's a punchline. Talk to a real lender, not Google lender, to figure out this stuff, because it's so personalized.
And don't jump into a credit repair without checking things out.
Yes.
Because you can trash your credit and make it worse.
Yeah.
In those situations. So.
All right. So here's another really common question we get. And this is a typical scenario. A lot of people, bigger pockets, great resource, the bigger pockets, house hack. I want to house hack a fourplex. Well, aside from all about, hey, what's the best numbers and what's the best type of property in the market and current trends, set that discussion aside. However, there's some very, very nuanced stuff when it comes to getting some of these loans on multifamilies, 2 to 4 units. And there's a big divide if it's a duplex or 3 to 4 unit. Mm-hmm. So we put down the common ones here: FHA, VA, and conventional. And the most common thing people want to do is, hey, I want to go house hack a fourplex with a 3.5% down FHA loan. Looks amazing on paper, Troy. What happens in reality?
Yeah, there's a lot more details behind it, how FHA looks at that as far as from an underwriting perspective. So it can be very specific to the borrower and then to the house itself. So it has to be analyzed to really know if it's viable or not.
And then what we run into here, and this is, again, why you want to talk with a lender and a brokerage team that knows what they're doing, is FHA has this self-sufficiency test,
right?
Which I think it only applies to 3 units and 4 units. Mm-hmm. And it has to be 75% of gross rents has to cover PITI plus mortgage insurance, principal, interest, taxes, insurance. So your monthly payment plus mortgage insurance. Jeff, Ben, how many fourplexes with 3.5% FHA loans have you closed last 2 years?
I'm going to say 0.
Big fat donut.
Ding, 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 000. Troy, how many have you closed?
None.
Yep.
Nothing.
And trust me, that's not out of our lack of desire wanting to do it. It's 100%. An amazing program, but just based on the way prices are and rents are, that basic numbers of, hey, this cash flow does not meet those payments. So that means a lot of times you have to bring more money to the down payment then. And we've looked a lot of times it'll be between 15 and 25% down payment then, which then kind of brings up the question, well, if I can't do an ultra low down payment, is house hacking really worth it? Generally speaking, the answer is no, because house hacking is about leverage. It's a leverage play. What about VA? So VA is for veterans and active military, right, Troy?
Yep. You just have to make sure that you're eligible for it. And we always check that out on the front end. So that's part of that pre-approval process to make sure you're capable of it. As far as VA goes, boy, it's an awesome loan if you have the ability to do it.
Well, because it's 0%. It's 0% down.
Yep.
But it's 0% down for a single family home, a duplex,
right, a
triplex, and a fourplex, right? As long as you're living there.
Right.
So while the FHA looks good on paper, but you're running this really little-known self-sufficiency test, the VA loan, I don't think there's any issues like that, right? They don't have a self-sufficiency test.
No, they are the loan if you can get it.
Yeah.
To utilize. And great program, great product. No monthly mortgage insurance. You just have the VA funding fee, and depending upon how many times you used it or if you used it at all. that'll determine what that is. But great product to be applied whenever possible.
So it's a great product. Now, unfortunately, not many people can use it, just those people that serve the military. Thank you, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, who served out there. You guys get an amazing loan program, so use it, please. Yes. Then conventional. And this is where we get a lot of sticking points because we always talk about 5% down conventional, 5% down conventional, 5% down conventional, which is great. But that is for single-family homes. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to go out there and owner-occupy a duplex for a house hack, Troy, how much do I have to put down?
You're talking 15% down.
15% down on a duplex. What about a triplex or fourplex?
And then you start putting more 20 to 25% down.
Yeah.
Even if you're owner-occupying them.
Yeah, that's even if you're owner-occupying them.
Right.
And that's just the reality. If it's not good or bad, that's the reality. And that's why, hey, you want to go out there and do a triplex or fourplex? Understand, a lot of times right now, it's not the best investment in the market right now in terms of numbers. Mm-hmm. But then you run into this issue where financing becomes really, really difficult, 100%. Except for the VA. And a lot of these enhanced programs do not work for multifamilies. So you can do a triplex or fourplex or a VA, absolutely look at it, but don't get fixated on VA. And please, 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 please make sure you talk to a competent lender that knows these nuanced rules, because we've had people get close to the closing table, not our clients, but other clients in horror stories, and stuff blows up 3 days before closing. Because, it failed the self-sufficiency test. You should have known that before you put an offer in, buddy.
Should have known that at pre-approval.
Yeah. I mean, that's the reality. It's like, what's the numbers on here? What can you afford? Nope. Now, talking to FHA, another common question we get. Got the question here from Suleika. Is a VA loan one and done, or can they use it again?
They can use it again, but there is a limit to how much they can be used.
Perfect.
So there's eligibility. We check that out with the VA, and subsequent home purchases are possible.
Great. All right. So here's a question that we used to get a lot. Now it's coming back. But it's, can I use an FHA 203K loan? So this is a very specialized product, FHA 203K. It's a rehab program. What's the basics of it, Troy?
Well, rehab, as it says. So you're going to buy a house and you're going to do some work to the house. And so you're going to try to structure in the purchase financing along with the rehabilitation work all in one little loan. And so sounds great, but application is a different story.
One of the things, sounds great on paper, but hard to execute in the market, right?
100%.
Yeah. Why is it hard to execute? And Jeff, I know you've looked into this. Mm-hmm. Why is it hard to execute?
It's mostly on the other side of it. So for one, the market, it doesn't work because most sellers don't want to wait the extra time to get the 203K loan approved.
Well, it should be like a 60+ day closing, right?
It has all the potential of that.
And then finding the approved contractors that you have to use for the program, that's the other issue, because a lot of contractors don't like all the additional paperwork. So now you have that additional layer of
it's additional government paperwork. Let's emphasize that.
Well said.
Which most people don't want to. And I mean, contractors, let's be real, they're usually not the best at paperwork in general, and they don't want to deal with that stuff. So it comes down to just generally speaking. Now, I've met a few people, because I've said in the past, people don't use it and I get roasted because one person used it. We're not saying it is not possible to use, but it really is kind of very close to that unicorn end of the spectrum that a lot of stars have to line up. And generally speaking, for a lot of people, a lot of situations, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. From a reality standpoint of, hey, buy property, move in, and move on with life. All right. What about home ready and home possible programs? And I have to admit, one of you guys brought this up in prep. I was like, man, I looked at those like 3 years ago. Remember, we can't really use them. I forgot the details. So what are the details, Troy?
Well, I think the best way to put it in a short version is that it's an enhancement on the mainstream programs of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and it just sharpens up the pricing, but you have an income restriction to meet. So it's a geographic income restriction you have to meet, and it'll give you a little sharper pricing on your mortgage insurance. You take a class online. Great program whenever you can apply it. I've got clients working on it right now, but it's income restrictive, and therefore it'll be price point restrictive as well.
Yeah, and so it's rarely used, because this is where, unfortunately, a lot of these programs, when they come like the Denver market, we have like income limits where you can only make so much money. And fortunately, in Denver, we generally make more money than a lot of other markets. But their housing prices are so high, and they have limits on there, and you get this stuck in these weird limits, and you're kind of like a no man's land.
Right. Yeah. It has a kind of a double whammy in that you can't make too much to get the program, but you got to make enough to qualify.
I think I'm making enough to afford a house in Denver.
Right. You got to afford the house and qualify. But we'll always apply it because, we'll try to apply the program whenever possible, but it's not as utilized as often now.
But again, this is why you talk to a lender who takes the time to get to know you, your situation, your goals, get to know your tax returns and your W-2s, and tells you, hey, here are options and here's where you can fit into it. And here are ones that, you know what, just crossed off the list.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, moving on. And we put this question towards the front because we get this question a lot, but it's kind of like it gets people wound up for no reason. And this is a lot of times, hey, I'm at, starting zero with zero house hacks. Hey, I appreciate people are thinking 2 steps forward. Hey, when I buy my first house hack, how can I buy my second house hack or next house hack? So it's good to think about, but don't get stuck on it. However, it's a balance because buying house hacks is a chess game. And we don't want to make a move today that causes issues with loan number 2 for house hack number 2 or loan number 3. We've had clients who we didn't buy the first property with, or they didn't work with Troy, on the first property. They buy house hack somewhere else. A year or two later, they come to us. And for a variety of reasons, like, oh, well, now they have a difficulty qualifying for loan number 2. We can find them a house number 2, but Troy's like, hey, I can't give you money in this house number 2 because this happened back here. We got to fix some things. So it's a chess game, and we want to just tell you that because a move today, we have to think 3 or 4 moves ahead. However, don't worry about all the details, but there are a few things to keep in mind. And what are those, Troy? When people are saying, let's fast forward, someone's going from house hack 1 to house hack number 2, what are some key things people have to do to make sure they can qualify?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is just making sure your debt to income ratio for house hack number 2 works. And how does house hack number 1 relate to that? So being able to offset house number 1 with the rental income makes it viable for house hack number 2. And how does that relate to your debt to income ratio overall? Will either, it should wash itself out pretty well. So hopefully it doesn't restrict you too much on house hack number 2. But it can handicap you, like you just mentioned. If you don't understand what house hack number 1 is going to do, it could handicap you for number 2, and your buy point isn't realistic.
Yep. And this is where, again, you want to sit down and talk with your lender and say, hey, Troy, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, because what happens sometimes is be like, oh, I'm doing a room by room house hack. My tenants give me their rent in cash. Great. We take the cash and maybe it just goes into your sock drawer and never gets reported on your income. Hey, I've been there and done that. Great. But then what happens when I show my tax returns next year, Troy?
Yeah, there's nothing on there to help offset.
Yeah.
Or you don't even have signed lease agreements that we can utilize for underwriting to offset.
No.
So if you've got signed leases, that can work.
Yeah. So it needs to be a signed lease or income on your income tax return. If it's not on there, Troy's like, well, I don't see it written down. I can't really use it.
Yep. And keep in mind too, I don't make the rules. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. I'm just here to play the game.
Don't get mad at me.
Don't get mad at me.
But I love it. You said play the game. That's all this is. It's playing a game of how can you, I don't want to say manipulate, but it's optimize lending programs, optimize all the stuff to buy $500,000 real estate for $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 down. Like it's amazing. Yep. So again, make sure you talk to a lender that knows this stuff. They can help guide you and be that strategic advisor. And since right now we are in Q1 and this tax return time, before you file your taxes and you're thinking about buying a house like you have a house hack, I would have your lender or Troy look at it to make sure that what you file helps optimize when you buy a house later this year. It's like, hey, you know what? Hey, you can write off some more stuff. Or you know what? Can we ease off on the write-offs because we need your income here so we can qualify for a loan?
Right.
And $2,000 less on a tax refund is probably a lot less important than you buying house hack number 4 this year.
Very much so.
What should I look for in a lender? Now, this is a question we get a lot. And we got some really good bullet points on here. We've already talked about it, but my biggest thing is, do they understand the house hacking game like Troy said? Number 2, do they actually take the time to go out there and spend time with you and get to know you? And that's an issue we have with some lenders. Like, hey, they're great lenders, but they're so busy, they can't give that person one-on-one time. So that's not ideal. But also, we got some more nuanced things on here. And I got one big thing I want to make sure everyone knows about. You put on here in-house underwriting. What is that, and why should I care about that, Troy?
Well, it's me having direct contact with my underwriting team, especially when you have something that might be in a gray area. So there's all the rules and guidelines for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. However, there's some interpretation of those rules and what an underwriter is willing to accept or not accept. And so there's some discretion that's given to the underwriter. So having that underwriter accessible to be able to actually look at some of the information for us in advance and getting the question ironed out saves a lot of headache down the road. So you don't have a blow up at some point, especially after you spent the time and energy to identify a house, go under contract, and oops.
Yeah.
You don't want any of those oopses.
And I mean, this goes into, something that, again, you always want to talk to multiple lenders and always talk to multiple brokers and make sure you find the right guy or girl for your team. But lenders, we sometimes say, I'm going to go online and go to whatever lender.com or these, popular places that have, the lowest rates in the world. But essentially what you're doing, and they have great websites, great marketing, but it's the equivalent to calling, in my mind, your cell phone company for help. And I've had Verizon for years. And when I've had issues, I call the 800 number. I talk to someone. After I'm on hold for 30 minutes, they write their notes and things never get done. I call someone else back, repeat myself, never get done. Mm-hmm. And this is what can happen in lending as well. Is like you can get really these attractive low rates. Oh, cool. They can get this rate and it's going to be an eighth of a point or quarter point lower than what Troy is going to give you in some cases. But you're paying off on value and service and having a vertical integration of in-house underwriting because it's that same analogy. Oh, you're talking to this person and that person's a lot of times so isolated in their call center, they have no idea who underwriting is. It's just another department that they're going to type in their notes and then someone in underwriting is going to look at it and someone may get back to you.
Yeah.
So you don't have that close connection, which is really, really important. Plus, what can happen there is that a lot of times causes issues in getting the loan approved and the property closed. People are like, oh, I'm saving an eighth of the point, but here's my question for you. Oh, hey, Jeff, you're saving an eighth of the point on paper, but you don't close on the property. How much are you really saving?
Zero.
Actually, it's negative,
right?
Because I mean, what
cost you, yeah.
I've heard many horror stories, again, not from our clients, but in just transactions of their agents where someone's going with whatever spaceship and they're getting the loan, and then 3 days before closing, underwriting fails, or there's an issue here, and either they have to extend closing, which sometimes they can or can't do, and sometimes we're past loan deadlines on the contract, and you're out of luck where that means you could lose a property and potentially lose your earnest money. Like, not only do you lose a property, you could lose your $5,000 or $10,000 good faith money, and that's a lot of money. That sucks.
Well, even if you didn't lose the earnest money deposit, you spent money on an inspection and appraisal, and that's over $1,000 easy. Yep. You could have been out of.
So with all that said, looking for a lender here, again, we always want the best rate, but in my mind, it's that sweet spot for where's the best value. Because you can always find someone cheaper, but you have to deal with horrible stuff and it takes you 10 times as longer. Is it worth the savings? Probably not. Troy is that sweet spot of value where in high expertise, vertical integration, has a great team, and you get in my opinion, you get the best bang for your buck and best bang for your time as well. So again, always talk to multiple lenders, always talk to multiple brokers to make sure you're doing the best thing for you as a consumer, as an investor. But keep things in mind, and my advice is don't get fixated on one thing or just an arbitrary interest rate. So I want to jump back here to a question about this House Hack 1 and House Hack 2. Jeremy in the comments says, Troy, do lenders consider different percentages of income when it's a rent by the room versus a traditional rental? So based on where the rental income is coming from, does it make a difference in the way you underwrite it?
I would say no is the quick answer. Documentation on those individual room renters is needed, and just had one but maybe 3 or 4 months ago that was renting out 4 bedrooms in the house and then was going to rent out the 5th or the 4th when he departed that property, and we were able to use it. So
was his name Jeff White by chance? That sounds like a Jeff White movie.
But
okay.
yeah. But it worked out awesome.
Yeah,
it worked out great. Yeah. So it can be done.
So again, it's very nuanced. So make sure you talk to Troy or your lender about that. Another question on here, in regards to being able to qualify for financing on your second house hack, do you need to have both signed leases and traceable rental income, or either, or does it depend? That's a really well-worded question, Logan. Thank you.
Yeah. I think the answer I'll probably give is depend, but I think you're on the right track. If you're a departure resident, you don't have to have it rented out before you move out. And before you go under contract, I guess would be the question.
I would say conceptually,
Answer,
you're in the right track. But
Yep.
again,
Yep.
talk with a lender and look at real numbers and help also realize what is documented, because that's really what
That's
the lenders
key.
need to see.
Documentation.
Irina, another one of our house hackers, asks, can a house hacker apply for her second property when there is a gap in her W-2 job?
Depends.
It depends.
Yeah.
So we got a question up in here. We'll answer that a little more in depth in a few minutes, Irina, because that's definitely a onion question. We got to peel back a few things.
Yeah, definitely possible though. It's not a no.
Yeah. Do I have to put down 20%?
Absolutely.
No. I can't believe we have to put this stupid slide in here. But
I think it was.
I'm
Ben's.
sorry.
I think it was
I had
Ben's
to.
idea.
I'm sorry. I get the
That's
question.
Ben's idea.
These are all.
oh no, it's not your fault, Ben.
These are the questions that come into me every day. When
No,
I
I
talk
know.
to
I did not mean that towards you. But I'm just saying this is one of our frustrations. We all
Yeah.
little bitch session here. These headlines, in the media sometimes about this 20% on this. It's like, yes, you can, but you don't have to. They somehow don't know or forget that you can put down 5%, or that if you are a veteran, you put down 0%. So high levels, no. And from my perspective, as someone that's helping you to maximize wealth in real estate, if you're house hacking, don't put down 20% unless you have a really, really good reason to. But I'm not a fan of it, and no, you don't need to. And if you see that, please yell at whoever told you that.
Yes.
So I see more questions here on some of the tax stuff. I'm going to save that towards the end, just so we can batch those, but keep posting those in there. Irina, Regilio, Logan, thank you guys. So can I use creative financing to house hack? And I want to define creative financing versus enhanced financing. Enhanced is a lot of these, enhanced programs on top of the Fannie Freddie conventional stuff. Creative financing is going to be like the hard money loan or a seller finance, or can I burr a house hack? Generally speaking, the answer is just no, right?
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have not heard of anyone doing a true burr house hack in the last 3 to 5 years.
And it's also like so there's two main things here to talk about. So we kind of have two questions. The one here, the creative financing and the burring, but they go very hand in hand together. A lot of these creative financing through hard money loan lenders and all this stuff, they are great products. We're not saying they're not great products. It's just the wrong tool for this job.
Well said.
Where those are usually investor products. And I can only think of one hard money lender I know of that will actually do hard money loans to an owner occupant. Because once you start loaning money to someone who's going to live there, your liability changes. I think your regulation changes too, right?
Regulatory requirements are
Which is probably the biggest
hugely-
thing.
That's the driving force.
Yeah, because there's a lot more consumer regulatory
Protection.
requirements,
Mhm.
as there should be, when they do that. So a lot of those creative financing hard money loans, you can't do it. And if you are going to talk to a hard money lender, in the first sentence, please tell them you're house hacking, and that will probably end the conversation very quickly.
Right.
And here's the other thing. You're already getting 0 to 5% down all these loans. You're already getting the most amazing leverage in the world. You don't need to do creative, crazy stuff. And burring is very tough because burring is where you're supposed to put low money down. And so if you're already putting down 0 to 5%, well, don't need to do much more. Now, we're not saying don't go out there and find a value add. Don't go out there and do more stuff. But just as we're looking at what you're doing with this type of house hack, there's different ways to do it. And generally speaking, that is, hey, go buy a place 0 to 5% down, add value, and then maybe add a HELOC on it later to extract equity in a different way. We'll talk more about that in a few slides, Ben. Wow, we're on some fun questions here with taxes, Troy. So drink your coffee, man.
I put on my CPA hat.
All right, so moving on to some other really common questions on here is, should I buy my interest rate down? Yes, no, or it depends.
Big fat depends. Depends on what you're planning on for the future, what you think the market's going to do, and if there's an opportunity to potentially refinance.
Yeah. And when we say buy the interest rate down, can you give us a high level, just kind of like what that means and what that is, Troy?
Well, there's kind of a middle of the road interest rate, which may not cost more than the standard closing cost for a transaction. And then if you want to improve that interest rate, you can pay extra money to get a lower rate, which results in a better payment. So you're buying it down. So you got to look at a cost of return.
So I'm going to just do total fictitious numbers here, but let's say someone's buying a $500,000 house hack and their par rate, or the rate they come back with, is 6%. And the buy down says, oh, well, if you want to buy this interest rate down to 5 3/4, you can, but you have to write a check for $3,000 or $5,000 or $10,000
Right.
to buy that rate down, right?
You got it. You nailed it.
And so 2 things to keep in mind here is this is incredibly, incredibly fluid. It changes daily based on the property, the zip code, what's going on in the bond markets and all this stuff. And the higher up Wall Street finance, it's ultimately derived from there. So there is a big, long food chain that factors into it. And so understand the concept, but do not what if this until you're pre-approved and really under contract. And when Jeff and Ben get you under contract, then Troy says, great, I got all your stuff. Let me run this property. Let's sit down tomorrow and go through options.
Yep. We'll
and then
a bunch
you
of scenarios, compare them side by side, and you can make the determination. So you're making an educated decision on the cost of return. Now,
the second thing to keep in mind here, and Troy mentions very briefly, I want to highlight this, is since we often mention that, hey, there's a good chance when the recession does happen, we historically see interest rates drop. If interest rates drop, hey, great. Hopefully it's dropping enough to where you can refinance at a lower rate. Mm-hmm. Now, if I buy a $500,000 home and I write you or whatever Wall Street a $5,000 check to buy my rate down, but then in 6 months interest rates drop and I refinance, will you give me my $5,000 back, Troy?
Sorry, it's spent money.
What? No.
Yeah.
But that's reality, but not right or wrong. And we used to do a lot of this when rates were ultra low and they really couldn't go any lower. But now, personally, I think it's a lot more like really, really measure twice and cut once to make sure it makes sense for you and what's going on in the economic conditions.
Yep. Well said.
So another one that goes along here is, should I prepay my PMI? And this is going to be your private mortgage insurance. And this is for conventional loans because FHA is MIP and FHA loans cannot be prepaid, but conventional loans can be. What is mortgage insurance, Troy?
Mortgage insurance is the vehicle that allows you to put less than 20% down. So on Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, if you're putting 20% down, they don't require it. Anything less, you're going to have it. And you have different ways you can pay it, unlike FHA, like you just alluded to. FHA is kind of a one-stop.
But is insurance for the borrower or is it insurance for the lender or the bondholder?
Yeah, it's purely for the lender's purposes.
Yeah.
It gives you the privilege of putting less money down is what it is. So you want to make sure, we always are working to optimize that. We shop through the main players, get you the best terms, but you want to look at it. Yeah, do you prepay it in one lump and get it off the monthly? Or do you just go with the monthly and then work on getting rid of it later on?
Yeah.
Which is doable.
And just like we talked about with the should I buy my interest rate down? Again, this is something that even I would say stronger, do not what if this before you're under contract, because I think this is probably the most highly variable number I've ever seen in lending because it depends so much on location, your credit score, zip code, this, that, and there's a handful of people that provide the insurance. So understand it, but do not get stuck in a rabbit's hole or try to figure out what PMI will cost you in a property. Hey, when you talk to Troy initially, he'll give you a ballpark, a range, but it'll be a range.
Right.
And then when you come get a loan or when you come get under contract, Troy, when he's saying, hey, here's the numbers, here's your interest rate buy down. Hey, also, here's your PMI, and here's what it costs to buy down PMI.
Right.
So, again, this comes down to making sure that you understand the concepts, but then you're talking with the right person at the right part of the process. And again, if I prepay PMI, same thing, $500,000 house, I prepay PMI, which a lot of times is, on that's probably $5,000 to $10,000, and I refinance in 6 months. Am I getting a check back, Troy?
Again, same answer. Money spent, gone.
And again,
yeah,
Troy's a messenger. He's not making those rules, guys. He's not keeping the money. But again, this is ensuring that the borrower, or I'm sorry, the bondholder or lender, if you have to be foreclosed on, it gives them insurance in case you're underwater. It helps cover that gap for them.
Right.
Hey, so one thing I want to put in here and mention on here is we're going through a bunch of frequently asked questions. We keep referencing, hey, talk to people, find the right who. And one of the best ways to do about that is networking. And Ben Einspar does an amazing job of running our Envision Advisors monthly house hack meetup and alternates every once between a happy hour in the evening, early coffee on Saturday morning. But it's a great place to network.
Yep.
Ben, where do people get info on this and why should they come?
First question, where do people get the info on it? Pull out your phone. Everyone has their phone on you, probably in your pocket. Take scan that with your camera and it'll pull up all the details. RSVP. So that's that's how you get the details. I try to make it as simple as possible. And then all it is, it's very informal. Jeff and I are there. Anyone that's wanting to learn more about it or build your network, because building your network, one thing I learned from you a few years ago was networking is a very underutilized part of the whole thing because you learn and you network with people that are doing like-minded things.
Yep. And it's a really cool community because a lot of people are willing to share. Oh, I've been there, done that. Here's a tip, or do this. So like, it's just a great place to like, and it's the stuff you just don't learn on webinars and podcasts and Bigger Pockets. It's just stuff, hey, get a beer, get a cup of coffee, kind of get to BS with someone, ask them questions. It's amazing. So come to ours, go to as many as possible in general, but network. They are highly valuable and well worth your time. And Ben does a great job of organizing things so they're in an environment to actually talk to people and not the loudest brewery in Denver. And also with some structure on there to network and also have some structure like break off masterminds as well. So the question on the slide says, how do I get financing if I'm self-employed? And we'll put one more question on there as well. We have a lot of people who have W-2s and they're thinking about leaving their W-2 to start a business or kind of be, pursue a gig economy type income with a couple of house hacks, do some of this, have some gig economy where they are self-employed or a 1099 contractor. What are the basics of it, and why do lenders scrutinize self-employed people so much more than W-2 people?
Just more risk. It just is more risk for them because they need to have a number to hang their hat on. So we talked about debt to income ratios. That's what it really boils down to. W-2 is pretty straightforward. If you're doing a salary, that's an easy number to calculate. We know what that monthly amount is. With a self-employed person, there can be variability to it. So we have to establish some history and time frame. And then we have to have some documentation to support it. And the support comes through a tax return. We figure, hate to say this, but if you're going to lie to the IRS, you can lie to us, I guess, too. But keep it consistent. It's the name of the game. But so we pull transcripts on that file tax return, and then we can calculate off that what you're capable of.
Now, you've heard us harp earlier about, hey, talk to lenders sooner rather than later. And if you are self-employed or you're thinking about transitioning out of a W-2 job, holy smokes, talk sooner, like talk yesterday. Like this is like the most, because a lot of times there might be an 18-month, a 24-month seasoning period, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
So there can be, and there's all the other factors that come into play. So before you leave your job, if you are in that situation, make sure you talk to a lender that knows the self-employed rules and regulations, because it is very nuanced. And great, you left your job, but now you can't get your loan. How great is that? And, it might be best, hey, stay at the job, get the house hack, do all that stuff, and then transition later when you can plan out the qualification time to match up with your house hack time.
Right. Absolutely. Or if you're going to do it, then at least you have an idea of what that's going to do for your time horizon for being able to do the next house.
And I mean, Ben and Jeff, Ben made that transition. Jeff's going to in the near future. Both of you guys have done that, right?
Yes.
Talk to lenders.
Yeah, absolutely.
What we did is talk to a lender, and we had that portfolio already built. So yes, I had the opportunity to move, but I had that house hack stack built first. So I was fine with it. And it was a decision I knew, and I knew the rules first.
Yeah.
Yep.
And likewise, too, that I also built up my rental income, realtor income.
A little bit more than me, yeah.
Because I didn't want to.
Is it a race? Is there
It
Always.
was.
Okay, good.
But yeah, that's a fair statement. I think people get too excited, think like I'll be a full-time 1099 or gig economy type worker, but it obviously takes time to build up any business. And if you delay gratification, especially in real estate, house hacking, investing, it will be worthwhile in the end.
Yep.
And guys, I'm going to speak as someone who's been self-employed my entire life. Lenders usually have never liked me most of my life. Nothing personal, but like it is something that you really, really want to get ahead of because it's more complex. And I've seen so many people, myself included in my earlier days, I make assumptions and then my assumptions are wrong and I lose out on some money and it sucks. All right. So a couple questions on here and then we got a couple more in the comments that actually fit these questions. We'll make sure all these comments, comments answered. So the question is, can I use a HELOC on my primary residence, aka my current house hack, to purchase my next house hack? And this goes back to where we talk about, like you can't really burr a house hack, but it's kind of the way you can take the same concept and kind of have that same burr mentality. So Troy, can I use a HELOC on my house hack?
All day.
And actually, what is a HELOC? Let me go back one more.
Yeah. Home equity line of credit. So it's like a line of credit against your house, second mortgage, but you can utilize it when you want. So they set an amount, you can draw from it, and then you can always pay it back later on at your discretion.
Yeah, it's a giant credit card on your house.
Yep. essentially, and then that's money we can use, and it's secured borrowed funds. So from an underwriting standpoint, through all the programs, that's totally allowable. But we have to do the calculation. That's where that pre-approval comes back into play, is that we got to determine, okay, if you pull 50 grand from your home equity line of credit, what is that payment going to look like? How does that affect your debt to income ratio and the overall qualification for house hack number 2, let's say?
So if you pull out a line of credit on your primary, does that reset your occupancy limit, or can you, like, if you were trying to do it for your next house hack, do you have to stay in there 12 months, or can you get your HELOC, use it for a purchase, a down payment for your next house hack, and move out in, let's say, a month or 2?
Yeah, I can't speak directly to the credit unions and banks that provide those, but generally speaking, yes, you can use it right away. You don't have to stay in it for the duration.
Yeah, but this is a big thing, and I actually want to read Adam's question here because this is blends in the strategy in that higher interest rate environment. So Adam says, what would you recommend, or what would be your way? What would you recommend for pulling money out from a previous house hack with equity? I'd be happy to get a blended rate on some 2022 refinances, but don't want to completely cash out refi at a 6% plus range when my rate is locked in 30 years at a 3% range. So, Mr. Rowdy, great question, and a great problem, using air quotes, that many people have.
Right.
And so this is a big difference here, is the reason we're talking about all these like 0 to 5% down programs to buy the house is because you are living there. You're an OO or owner occupant. And then same thing, just like it totally different loans from Troy, if you're owner occupying, different things. If Jeff is getting a HELOC on his current house hack, he's going to get a primary HELOC, which is usually much more favorable in terms and rates and amounts. Then if he goes back to, I got my house hack number 1 from 6 years ago. Now that's an investment property. A lot fewer people do HELOCs on there and usually get a lot less money and a lot less good terms. So a great way to pull out money on here is doing a HELOC if you have enough equity in there when you buy a place 5% down. Now, with that said, if you buy a place 5% down a year from now, we're not seeing these crazy gangbusters appreciation. So it's going to be take a little more work now in buying a value-add property, adding value, doing things like that. But it's a great strategy, and definitely one you should talk to Troy before you move out and get on to your next house hack. Because, hey, it may make sense. It may hurt your credit. It may change off your DTI. You're like, you know what? Heck yeah, do that. Pull out $30,000 and boom, we got a down payment for your next house hack loan. But again, it depends. That's why you talk to people that are very, very knowledgeable. So Adam, in your case, where you have an investment properties, and this is where, as you build your house hack stack, you have properties that, hey, you used to live in there. Now they're investment properties. Totally different lending game. So, and I've got a bunch more information on it, but there's 3 main ways that I've seen people put money out in this market. You can do a full cash out refinance, but now you're going to be in that 6, probably more like 7% rate now for an investment cash out refi. You can do an investment HELOC. I know about 2 credit unions around town that actually have a good product for that. The third is I've seen some lenders have like a second position cash out refi where they can pull out some money. And Troy, I mean, I know lending products are always changing. Do you have any specialized lending products for like these situations that, you know, they don't want to like lose their first on investment property?
Yeah, I think you just hit on it. There's definitely some specialty companies out there that will allow for those things, those situations, and those, again, this is why you have the team, right? Yep. So you have some of these points of contact that you can utilize in order to tap into that equity given your situation. So that's why that evaluation up front works great. So you can determine that, point you in the right direction, and get you set up to get that money for that next house hack.
Phenomenal. And so very little question, great questions, but things you can keep in mind. And Troy touched on something where, like, you know, we mentioned this program or this lender or this bank or whatever. Like I said, 80% of the time, whether you're doing a loan or a deal, the bread and butter stuff, which is what we do, is going to be it most of the time. And as the market changes and some loan programs or things come in and out style, we always do the best we can and recommend things to you. Like, we've all recommended people, hey, go do this instead. And we've talked ourselves out of a sale. And we're all commission people here. But we have that advisory, that consultative approach because, hey, we want you to do the best thing right now because we want to earn a long-term relationship in the long run because that's going to be the best for you and ultimately the best for us as real estate professionals. But that's how we balance, hey, we are commission-driven people, but it's always client and value first and what's best for you. And then, hey, the money will follow to us in the grand
Absolutely.
scheme of things. All that,
Absolutely.
karma stuff. And, as I'm trying to get my slides working here, Troy, I'm glad that you're one of the few learners out there the same attitude that we have. So thank you. I know you've talked to us about some sales as well, and we appreciate it, especially for our clients. So thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. Do I have to move out before rents can be recognized as income to offset my DTI or debt to income ratio? Troy, this is you written all over it.
Yeah, absolutely. Generally speaking, yes, because you have to turn it into a rental property. So there's certain underwriting allowance for utilizing income from somebody renting within the house, but that's a rare case, a rare situation.
So I got to add another layer onto that. What does it have to do with lease period? What if your lease agreement is 90 days, or let's say it's a short-term rental and you're renting it out for less than 30 days?
Right. So to add to that, and this question has come up and we've come across this on many occasions, the underwriting guidelines, again, we're blaming them.
Yeah.
It's their fault. It's the way they set up the loans.
Don't kill the messenger.
Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA. You've when you have like an Airbnb, let's just say, and you're doing short-term rentals, they want to see a history, so they have some sort of idea of what income's being generated off that, so they can average it, and we can hang our hat on a number from a monthly basis. Mm-hmm. So an Airbnb's got to have a year at least or so, and at least a tax return under the belt to be able to see what's showing up on Schedule E of the tax return, so we can have a number to hang our hat on. When you do a long-term lease for a year, then they'll take that. Yep. There has to be no history. So if you sign a 1-year lease on the house you're vacating on house hack number 1, you're going to number 2, then I can use that lease and offset it with a good portion of that lease agreement.
Great.
What about the awesome rent by room people, Troy, that rent out rooms while they're living there?
That works well too. And again, we had that situation that I mentioned earlier where he's renting out bedrooms per bedroom, but he had signed leases in place and we were able to use that. And then he got a new lease for the bedroom he was in the house, single family house, multiple bedrooms. So he was renting out multiple rooms that he was living in the house with that house hack. And then he rented out, and we threw that lease in on top of those 3 other leases and we're able to make it work.
Beautiful.
But we got the questions answered early on with underwriting, and we made sure the underwriter that was going to underwrite the file saw that, so there wouldn't be a problem later on.
Well, it's why it's great to have underwriting in-house, right?
Exactly, to the point. You get the question resolved, and so when that file does officially get under contract and come in, then I go right back to the underwriter. Here's the one we talked about.
Yeah.
And you're on your way.
Yeah. Great. So we got a couple more questions here, and we're doing about perfect on timing. So we got one more question, then I got a few ones in the comments I want to circle back around to. So this is always an exciting one, and this is where I think a lot of house hackers gravitate towards, especially if they can't do the crazy creative finance stuff. And it's, can I purchase a house hack within a 50-50 partnership where only one of us lives in the house hack? So that might be 2 friends, or it might be someone and their parents, right? I mean, like, so what are the basic scenarios? What's the basic answer on that, Troy?
Good example, had a daughter that was house hacking with her father. He was co-signing for her to be the owner occupant of the property. So it works out great. So she's the one owner occupying the property. They both are on the financing, and they're off to the races with the house hack. They had the funds to put the minimum down, the 5% down, and they both qualify for the loan. She has him helping her qualify for the financing, but she's the owner occupant of it.
That's great. And so we've seen that, and we've also had quite a few clients where they're not related they're not family, but they're, two good buddies from college, and then they want to buy a house hack, or one can, and they've done deals like that as well. I mean, those are the 2 common ones. Are there any other big scenarios? I'm drawing a blank on that, Ben, Jeff. I think those are 2 main ones, right?
Like friends, that one person that has maybe the credit, another person, is a 1099, but they want to combine so they could use that credit person that has really good income to the 1099 person wants to be like the operator and be the primary resident.
Yep.
And then
when you package it all out, as long as when you combine the resources of the group together, then you can really make a good determination on what that group as a package for that loan can qualify for. So they might bring different elements to it, to your point, Jeff. Exactly.
Does that still qualify for a conventional loan?
Yep.
Or does that go to commercial? Because it's
no.
Okay.
No. And what needs to be kept in mind, good point you're bringing up there, is that all the mainstream programs, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, they're lending to individuals, not to companies. Mm-hmm. So as soon as you lend to an entity, it becomes a commercial loan. So it's individuals that we're
There,
lending
that's
to.
beautiful. So like if Jeff and I would just graduated college
And you wanted to go house
and
hack.
we're like, Jeff, let's get our first property. It's going to be a house hack. I'm going to live there, but let's create an LLC.
Yep.
That's what I'm getting. Like, that's the questions that I hear. So then
It's commercial.
That's in that case, it's
if it's LLC buying and doing the financing, commercial. But
Yep.
if it's the two of you as individual persons doing it, then you can qualify for the financing through the mainstream programs.
And I mean, I'll pause there because that is a very common question about putting properties in LLCs, how to structure it. It's a great question, but it's a very nuanced question. We'll go into a deeper dive in a later series. We got Byron with 3 Pillars Law, does a lot of entity formations for us. We also have Pam Moss on the estate planning side, who's legal planning for people. We're going to get 2 licensed and smarter people in these topics here, talk about the pros and cons of it, because it really is a question with your lawyer, your estate planner, and the lender for like what's the right pros and cons for you on there. So I want to pivot to a couple questions on here because we got a few minutes left. So Rugilio, if I'm saying that right, for a rent by the room strategy, wherein one would aim for a single family with an expanded room count, say 5 bedroom, 3 bath, what lending programs are available to qualify given that future rental income history from roommates is not yet available? So I'm going to reword that a little differently here to give people, if you go out there and buy a 4-plex, I'm going to live in unit A, well, lenders will use units B, C, and D income to help say, hey, here's what you can, this will offset your monthly mortgage costs, help you qualify. But if you're buying a single family home for room by room rental or Airbnb or medium term rental, that's not the case, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's where the hack comes in, right? You're using a loan program for a single family owner occupied primary residence. So you got to qualify for that. You're going to hack some rooms out by renting those rooms out. And that's going to help you for your cash flow and your situation. And then for house hack number 2, when you depart it.
So from a high level, unfortunately, like there isn't, I mean, just it would be all the standard programs we talked about, conventional FHA, VA, or enhanced program if you qualify for. But really, this is going to fall on your shoulders for your income and your DTI. And so you have to qualify, on your own 2 feet that way and based on what income you have.
Right.
And if you have trouble, well, then that is where you may get a 50-50 partner and say, hey, I can't qualify. I'm going to have to figure something else out. And that is one reason why we do see partnerships for house hacks.
Yep.
So because one person can qualify or they add the income up on there. So a couple of questions on the self-employed stuff here. Irina says, okay, I just lost that. So here's what I want to ask. I'll find out in a second. Carly says, my lender mentioned if I were to refinance, I would need to repay closing cost. Is that true? And are there any other additional costs to refinance? So let's clarify something here, because let's say, hey, you bought a property today and get a loan today, or you did that a year ago and the day you want a loan. Those are 2 separate transactions. And that repay might be the best word, but you don't repay the closing costs from a year ago. That's just a sunk cost, right?
Right. That's hard money spent.
Yeah. Now, when I come back and get my loan, my refinance with you, since it's a new loan and new transactions, I have to pay closing cost again, right?
There's no such thing as a no cost refinance. And so it's just a matter of packaging. So how you package the new refinance. There's ways to carry those costs, and then you do some analysis on that to determine which way makes the best sense, given the circumstance environment. Yes, there's always going to be new title insurance. There may be an appraisal required. And so there's going to have to be a credit report ran. So there are costs that have to be considered in it that you have to weigh in and return on investment for that.
Yeah. And if you're going to refinance, especially going to refinance on a property you purchased, last 6 months or a year or two, I definitely talk to the lender that gave you that loan. Because they may, they know your file already, and there might be some other things that they can help you out with. So always talk to your original lender first. Yeah. Unless you don't like him or her, then don't. But generally, go talk to him or her first.
Put a little quick plug in.
Yeah.
We have a repeat client program that we utilize. So,
tell me about this.
Our company does a reduced margin on the loan, and I do a reduced commission on the loan. And so it just enhances the pricing that we have available at the time. So if the rates get better, it just sharpens up the pricing that much more to come back through and do that refinance on that same property.
I didn't know you had that program. That's even cooler.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter when. It's 5 years, 10 years down the road. You can come back and say, hey, I bought this house over on Clark Street. I want to refinance. It's like, great, you're in the program.
Ooh,
Sweet.
you're in the friends and family program,
Friends
huh?
and family.
All right. So, Adam says, we've talked about putting 0 to 5% down versus 20%, but if you're planning to turn the property into a rental in 12 months, should the down payment align with your forecast and the rents at the same time? And that way, are your cash flow positive when you move out? Adam, it depends will be the answer. But I think in webinar 4, we're doing underwriting. Either webinar 3 or 4, we're going to do underwriting on there. And we will spend about an hour talking about the subject because there's 2 ways to underwrite a house hack. While you're living there, and then once you move out. And what's the most important one, Jeff?
After you move out.
Once you move out, because you're buying and living in a future rental property for at least 1 year to keep Troy and other lenders and their underwriters happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really comes down to crunching much numbers and what you're willing to do and how much cash flow you want, or if you're willing to subsidize some of the properties that you put down 5%. So underwrite it before and after, and that's part of the questions. You have to like manipulate down payment, buy down programs, prepaying PMI, lower interest rates, see what the right blend is for you. But we'll get into a lot more details, I think, in webinar 4 on that. Someone asked, is the video going to be available later? Yes, it will be. And we got one more question on there we're going to wrap up. And this was about self-employed. Maybe I missed that question.
I think there's one on there on 1099, Chris.
Well, yeah, if you have it, can you read that, Ben? That's what I'm
can't.
looking for.
I can.
I am failing at that right now, man.
All right. So this one is from Allison. How does 1099 income factor into this 2-year history ? More or less ?
Depends. That's my favorite. I hate to say it, but a good solid
answer.
year works well. And 1099 is self-employed in our world. So we've got to have some sort of history and some sort of documentation that we can average out to calculate off of for underwriting purposes.
And you go off the net number, right? You don't do the top
Well,
one.
there are some add backs, Jeff. So that's a good thing. So what I always tell people is reality and how things are underwritten can be 2 totally separate things. So that's why that pre-approval has so much value, is because we can determine based on what you're showing and what the tax return shows, how much of that from an underwriting perspective we can utilize.
Awesome.
Yeah, for qualification.
Great. All right. Well, we are a few minutes past the hour mark, so I want to be mindful of everyone's time at the panel here, plus the viewers. So this was action-packed. We are going to keep answering additional questions throughout the series, and we'll do some other more advanced questions as they come in. But we wanted to keep this to like the high level, like the majority of questions that we get, that most house hackers have. Hopefully, we gave you an hour and 10 minutes of a fire hose information. If you need follow-up information, ask us. Repeat it. But again, there's a balance. Do not try to figure everything on your own. A lot of times a 20-minute sit down with us, or especially in this case, financing with Troy, that 20 to 30 minutes is going to tell you a lot more and give you a better reality check than you spending 20 hours on our webinars and Mr. Google. So please take the high level stuff, get those concepts, and then talk to the appropriate people in your team and get someone to sit down with you and give you that one-on-one advice so they can be your strategic advisor. So, Ben, Jeff, Troy, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
everyone out there in the webinar, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, so much. We love you coming out. We love the questions. And we will see you next week for... What's our webinar next week, Ben? House hacking in Colorado, right? Ooh, this is a... Okay, now we're talking about it. So this is where we're going to take all the realities of the market and we're going to layer it on with these concepts, but also layer it on with these financing concepts as well. Think about this giant matrix. It's all this, hey, your goals, your financing options, what's reality in your market? And then it's all about finding that, I guess almost a Venn diagram, where's where it can make sense. Yep. Cool. Well, everyone, thank you so much. Had a blast. Recording will be out soon. You can download the slide deck soon. And we will see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.